In May 2018, Zinedine Zidane stood in the Bernabeu tunnel after winning his third consecutive Champions League title and announced he was leaving. His reason was almost philosophical. He said it was time for another voice to be heard. No club in the modern era had ever won 3 in a row. Zidane had done it with a roster built not on the biggest names, but on the right balance. And then he walked away, leaving behind a club that had just learned the most important lesson in football management. 3 years later, Real Madrid had forgotten it. And in the summer of 2024, they went out and proved exactly how completely they had forgotten it by signing the most gravitationally dominant player on the planet into a squad that had no Casemiro, no Modric, no Kroos, and no leader in the dressing room capable of holding any of it together. Kylian Mbappé. The player Zidane grew up watching as a boy would be the player who exposed everything Zidane spent a decade trying to build. That is not a coincidence. That is an institution repeating history because the opportunity was too beautiful to resist. To understand why the Mbappé signing was always a structural gamble, you have to go back 20 years, to 2003. And, to a quote that is perhaps the most important thing Zinedine Zidane has ever said about football, Real Madrid had just won La Liga. They had Zidane, Ronaldo, Figo, Beckham, Raúl, the best attacking roster assembled in a generation. And Florentino Perez decided to sell Claude Makelele, the defensive midfielder who sat in front of the defense, intercepted everything, started every counterattack, and made every glamorous name on that team possible. In his place, Perez signed David Beckham. Another star, another commercial monster, another layer of gold. Zidane's response was instant and surgical. He said, "Why would you put another layer of gold paint on a Bentley when you have already lost its engine? 3 years, no trophies, 5 coaches." That is what removing the engine looked like. And when Zidane became Madrid's manager in 2016, the first thing he did was the opposite. He promoted Casemiro, a defensive midfielder barely anyone knew, to the spine of his team. He made Casemiro as important as Ronaldo. He rested Ronaldo for league games to preserve him for knockouts. He persisted with Benzema when the fans booed because Benzema, in Zidane's own words, was important for the balance of the side. Balance. Not brilliance. Balance. That was the engine. And in 2024, Real Madrid signed Kylian Mbappé without one. Now, here is where we have to be precise, because this is not an argument that Kylian Mbappé is a bad player. He is not. He is generationally gifted. 42 goals in all competitions in 2025-26. La Liga top scorer. The fastest man in world football at full sprint. A player of such physical rarity that even Didier Deschamps, the pragmatist's pragmatist, built France's entire tactical structure around his specific attributes. But Deschamps also said something else. Something that should have been the first sentence in every Real Madrid board meeting before the Mbappé signing. He was asked about Mbappé's defensive work rate, his distance covered, the critics who said he didn't run enough when France didn't have the ball. And Deschamps said, flatly, "If you want him to cover at least 11 kilometers per match, don't bother. He won't. 11 kilometers. That is the minimum distance covered by most outfield players in professional football. Every outfield player in every top European league contributes more defensively per 90 minutes than Mbappé, according to Opta data covering 6,044 players, including goalkeepers. That statistic is not a moral judgment. It is a tactical reality. And the tactical reality is this. Zidane's system, the one that won 3 consecutive Champions Leagues, required every single player, including Cristiano Ronaldo, to accept a specific role within a collective structure. Mbappé's profile is constitutionally incompatible with that requirement. He arrived at Madrid expecting what he had at PSG, a team shaped around him. What he found was a team shaped around nobody. And the collision between those two things became the most expensive management problem in football. So why did Real Madrid sign him? The answer is complicated, and also completely simple. The simple version: Florentino Perez has been chasing Kylian Mbappé since 2021. He bid €200 million. PSG refused. Mbappé verbally committed and then stayed. Madrid were humiliated publicly on a global stage twice. When the free transfer opportunity arrived in 2024, Refusing it would have been institutionally inconceivable. You do not tell the Santiago Bernabéu you chose not to sign Kylian Mbappé because of defensive metrics. That is not how this club operates. But there is also a structural argument. The squad that had absorbed Ronaldo, Bale and Benzema simultaneously, and still won 3 Champions Leagues, had succeeded because of what surrounded them. Casemiro, Kroos, Modric, Ramos, leaders. The engine Zidane had described in 2003 and then rebuilt personally in 2016. By 2024, every one of those players was gone. Madrid were signing Mbappé into an engineless Bentley. The gold had never been more brilliant. The vehicle had never been less prepared to carry it. And at his unveiling on the 16th of July 2024, the man who greeted Mbappé personally on the Bernabéu pitch, who welcomed him to the club his philosophy had defined, was Zinedine Zidane. The camera caught the moment. If there is a single image that captures the gap between what Real Madrid knows and what Real Madrid does, it is that one. What followed across 2 seasons was not a slow erosion. It was a rapid institutional collapse. 3 managers, 2 trophyless years. In year 1, Ancelotti could not find a system that made Mbappé, Vinicius and Bellingham function collectively against elite opposition. Madrid lost 4 Clásicos to Barcelona. They won nothing. In year 2, Xabi Alonso arrived precisely the kind of principled, high-demand manager that Zidane's philosophy would have recognized. Alonso wanted structure. He wanted pressing. He tried to bench Vinicius Jr. for discipline reasons. And the dressing room turned against him. Vinicius publicly disputed being substituted in El Clásico on a global stage, in a moment that should have ended with the player's authority diminished. Instead, it ended the managers.
Big breaking news to bring you. We've just been speaking about some of the managers that might be potentially available in the months to come. Well, one manager has just become available in the last few minutes because Real Madrid have sacked Xabi Alonso, with the club second in La Liga, 4 points behind the leaders and champions Barcelona, their great rivals, who beat them 3-2 in the Spanish Super Cup yesterday.
Alonso had lost 6 matches in 34 games, a win rate of over 70%. He was still sacked. Because at Real Madrid, when the player is bigger than the coach is always the solution. For the locker room to embrace your ideas, they have to respect you. If there is no harmony, something will always be missing. Under Zidane, they respected him. Under Alonso, they didn't. And the reason at its root is that Zidane inherited a team with leaders who enforced discipline from within. Ramos, Modric, Casemiro. People who would tell a player when he had overstepped. Vinicius admitted it publicly at the end of this season. We don't have Nacho, Modric or Kroos. They gave experience. And into that leaderless space, Mbappé's arrival didn't ignite a dressing room. It ignited a power struggle. Meanwhile, Federico Valverde was hospitalized after a dressing room altercation with Aurélien Tchouaméni. 2 players fined €500,000 each by the club. The season ended as the most chaotic in Real Madrid's recent history, in a club that has spent a century finding ways to win despite itself. But here is where intellectual honesty demands a pause. Kylian Mbappé scored 42 goals in all competitions in 2025-26. He was the highest scorer in La Liga. He scored 15 Champions League goals in 11 games. These are not the numbers of a player who is failing. They are the numbers of a player who, in a different era, surrounded by different teammates, under a different structure, might have been the most complete winner in the club's modern history. The chaos of 2024-26 was not exclusively Mbappé's fault. It was the chaos of a transition period that would have been difficult regardless of who was signed. The question heading into next season with Mourinho expected to take charge is not whether Mbappé should have been signed. He should have been. The question is whether the club that signed him was ready to do what Zidane always did. Build the machine the player required, rather than expecting the player to become a different kind of machine. Zinedine Zidane never told Real Madrid not to sign Kylian Mbappé. That must be said clearly. He attended the unveiling. He greeted him warmly. He said publicly, "We'll see what happens." What Zidane did was something more durable than a warning. He spent a decade demonstrating through trophies and exits and press conferences and training sessions that Real Madrid only works when the stars serve the system. Mourinho is coming to Real Madrid. Mbappé is still there. The question that defines their next 3 years is the same question that has defined this club for 50 years. Can you make the world's most talented players serve something bigger than themselves? Zidane answered it. Drop in the comments, do you think Mourinho can do what Zidane did? And if this is the kind of football story that goes deeper than the scoreline, subscribe. We are here every week.